Welcome back to Digital Mastery Academy. Today we're building a production-ready AI email agent in n8n that reads incoming Gmail messages, classifies them with Claude API, and replies automatically with context-aware answers. To set the stakes, this exact workflow is currently replying to about 140 customer support emails per day for a SaaS I run, saving roughly 12 hours of human time every week, and the cost stays under 4 cents per email at Claude Sonnet 4.6 pricing. By the end of this 23-minute tutorial, you will have a fully functional n8n workflow connected to Gmail with OAuth, a Claude API HTTP request node with a tuned classification prompt, a Supabase vector memory layer that remembers prior conversations with each customer, a routing branch that splits spam, frequently asked questions, and urgent tickets, an autoresponder that pulls dynamic variables from your customer database, and a confidence threshold rule that hands off to a human via Slack webhook when Claude is unsure. I will show every single node, every prompt, every line of SQL, and every Docker command. You should be able to copy this exactly and have it running in your own n8n instance in about 90 minutes if you follow along carefully. Subscribe and hit the notification bell, because we ship 2 vibe coding builds per week and the next one is going to plug a Stripe webhook into the same agent so it can refund payments without human approval. Before we open n8n, let me explain why this stack n8n plus Claude API plus Supabase beats just plugging ChatGPT into Gmail. First, n8n gives us a visual workflow with explicit nodes for Gmail trigger, HTTP request, if condition, and posters. That means every step is debuggable. You can replay one execution, inspect the JSON between nodes, and rerun from any failure point. ChatGPT integrations like Zapier or generic OpenAI plugins hide this from you and become a black box the moment something breaks. Second, Claude Sonnet 4.6 is currently the strongest model for instruction following on long unstructured emails. I benchmarked it against GPT-4o and Gemini 1.5 Pro on 1,000 support tickets, and Claude got the classification right 94% of the time versus 87 and 81%. Third, Supabase Vector lets us store conversation history as embeddings, so when the same customer emails again next month the agent already knows their planned tier, their past complaints, and the resolution. That context window is what makes auto-replies feel human. Common mistake people make: they pipe Gmail straight into ChatGPT with no memory layer, get generic answers, and customers complain. The memory layer is non-negotiable. Recap of this scene: n8n gives observability, Claude gives accuracy, Supabase gives memory. Now let's spin up the infrastructure. Open your terminal and let's self-host n8n with Docker so we own the data and avoid n8n clouds for execution pricing. Create a project folder with dir email agent and cd email agent. Inside, create a docker compose.yml file with the following content: version 3, services, n8n, image docker.n8n.io/n8neo/n8n latest, ports 5678:5678, environment variables n8n_host equals localhost, n8n_ protocol equals HTTP, webhook _URL equals HTTP localhost 5678, and a volumes mount of n8n_data:/home/node/.n8n. Why these specific environment variables? n8n_host controls the URL the editor displays, webhook_URL is what Gmail OAuth will call back to, and the volume mount persists your workflows across container restarts so you don't lose work. Run docker compose up-d. After about 15 seconds, n8n is reachable at localhost 5678. Create your first user, set a password, and you land in the empty workflow editor. Common mistake to avoid: forgetting the volume mount means every time you restart Docker, all your workflows disappear. Always check that the volume is named and persistent. Recap: we now have n8n running locally on Docker, persisted, ready for nodes. Next up, we wire in Gmail. Click the plus icon in the top left of the n8n canvas to add a trigger node. Search for Gmail trigger and select it. n8n asks you to create new credentials, so click Create New, name it Gmail Personal, and click Sign In with Google. A browser tab opens for OAuth consent. You must use a Google Cloud project where you've enabled the Gmail API and added an OAuth client ID with redirect URI set to your n8n instance +/rest/OAuth2-credential/callback. Save the client ID and secret in n8n, click Connect, approve the scopes, and the credential turns green. Now configure the trigger, set event to message received, set pull times to every minute for testing, and set filters to label :support if you only want emails tagged support. Common error here: people use a personal Gmail without enabling the Gmail API in Google Cloud Console. The OAuth callback returns access_denied. fix, go to console.cloud.google.com, create a project, enable Gmail API under APIs and services, then create OAuth credentials of type web application. Recap, we now have a Gmail trigger that fires every minute on new support labeled emails. Each run gives n8n a JSON object with message ID, sender, subject, body, and headers. That's our payload for the next node. Drag a new node and search for HTTP request. This is how we'll call Claude API since n8n doesn't have a native Anthropic node yet, the one is in beta. Configure, method post, URL https://api.anthropic.com/v1/messages, authentication none, headers add 3 keys x-api-key with your Claude API key from console.anthropic.com, anthropic-version equals 2023-06-01, content-type equals application/JSON. Body type JSON. The body uses an n8n expression, model equals Claude-sonnet-4-6, max tokens equals 1024, system equals our classification prompt which I'll show next, messages equals an array with role user and content equal to a template string interpolating the email subject and body. Critical detail people miss, n8n expressions use double curly brace $JSON.subject syntax, not the handlebars syntax some tutorials use. Test this node by pinning the previous Gmail node's output and clicking execute node. If you get a 401 back, your API key has a typo or your account hasn't added a credit balance yet, Anthropic requires at least $5 topped up to use the API. Recap, we now post every incoming email to Claude and get back a JSON response with the model's classification. Now the prompt. This is the single most important thing in the whole workflow because it determines whether the agent classifies correctly and replies sensibly. Open the system field in the HTTP request body and paste, you are an email triage agent for a SaaS called X, read the customer email and return a JSON object with 3 keys. Category which is exactly one of spam, FAQ, urgent, or other. Confidence which is a float between 0 and 1. Suggested _reply which is a polite English reply under 150 words referencing the customer's specific issue. Output only the JSON object with no markdown fence. Do not include explanation. Then add 3 concrete few-shot examples showing input email and ideal JSON output. Why few-shot examples matter, zero-shot Claude tends to overclassify as urgent. With 3 labeled examples, accuracy on my benchmark went from 78 to 94%. Common mistake, forgetting the no markdown fence instruction means Claude wraps the JSON in triple backticks and your downstream parser breaks. Always include explicit no markdown fence and no explanation. Recap, the prompt classifies and proposes a reply in one shot. The HTTP node now returns structured JSON we can parse. Add a Postgres node connected to your Supabase project to give the agent memory. In Supabase create a table called email_history with columns ID big and primary key, customer_email text, thread_ID text, embedding vector 1536, message text, response text, created _ at timestamp default now. Run the SQL create extension if not exists vector first if you haven't enabled vector. Why 1536 dimensions, that's the size of OpenAI text embedding 3 small and Anthropic's Voyage 3 embeddings, both work. In n8n add a Postgres node before the Claude HTTP node, set operation to execute query, and paste select message, response from email_history where customer_email equals $1 order by created _ at desk limit 5, this fetches the last 5 conversations with the same customer. Inject those rows into the Claude prompt as conversation history so the model knows context. After the Claude node, add another Postgres node with insert into email_history that stores the new message in response. Common error, forgetting to vacuum the embedding column means queries get slow after 10,000 rows. Schedule a weekly vacuum analyze. Recap, we now have a memory layer where every email and reply is stored, retrieved by customer, and fed back to Claude as prior context. After the Claude HTTP node we add a switch node to route the email based on category. Drag a switch, set the value to $JSON.content0.text and parse it as JSON.category. Add 4 output branches, branch 0 matches spam, branch 1 matches FAQ, branch 2 matches urgent, branch 3 matches other or default. For spam route to a Gmail node that adds the spam label and archives the message done, no reply. For FAQ route to a Postgres lookup node that fetches your can answer template by FAQ key and merges it with the suggested _reply, this gives faster, more consistent answers for known questions. For urgent route to the Slack node we'll build in scene 10 plus a draft reply. For other route to the autoresponder we build in scene 9. Why we route instead of always replying. Spam should never get a reply because that confirms your address is live and you'll get more spam. Urgent needs human eyes within 1 hour, not an automated apology. Common mistake, using if nodes nested instead of switch creates spaghetti graphs that are unmaintainable. Always use switch when you have more than 2 branches. Recap, the workflow now branches on category, treating each type appropriately. On the FAQ and other branches we send an auto reply through Gmail. Drag a Gmail node, set operation to send reply, set thread ID to $JSON.threadID from the trigger, and set the message body to a template that interpolates $JSON.suggested_reply from Claude. The trick to making auto replies feel human, include the customer's first name pulled from a Postgres lookup of your customers table where email equals the sender. Also include a sign-off with your real name, not just the bots. Add a small disclaimer at the bottom, replied with AI assistance. Reply to this email if you want a human to follow up. This transparency boosts trust and avoids regulatory issues in the EU under the AI Act, which requires disclosure when AI generates customer communications. Common mistake, forgetting to set thread ID means every reply opens a new conversation thread and the customer is confused. Always pass thread ID through every node downstream of the trigger. Recap, FAQ and other emails get an auto reply with personalization, AI disclosure, and proper threading. On the urgent branch we add escalation. Drag a Slack node, configure it with an incoming webhook URL from your support channel, and set the message to a template, new urgent email from sender@customer.com with confidence score 0.64. Subject line. First 200 characters of body. Then a draft reply Claude suggested. Include a button that links to the Gmail thread. Add an if node before the Slack to check that confidence is below 0.85, only escalate when the model is unsure. Why 0.85? I tested 0.7, 8, and 9 on my data. Below 7, model overconfidence let bad replies through. Above 9, almost everything escalated and I lost the productivity gain. 85 is the sweet spot for my domain. Yours might differ, instrument and tune. Add a second Postgres node after Slack that logs the escalation event with reasoning, so you can later analyze patterns. Common mistake, forgetting that Slack webhooks are rate limited at 1 message per second per channel. Add a small delay node if you expect bursts. Recap, urgent emails with low confidence escalate to Slack with a one-click human takeover. Time to test with real emails. Send yourself 3 test emails to the support address, 1 obviously spammy, 1 asking how do I reset my password, a clear FAQ, and 1 saying my entire account got deleted, I am furious, refund me now, urgent and angry. Click execute workflow in n8n and watch the runs. Open each run in the executions panel and inspect the JSON between nodes. The spam email should hit the spam branch, get labeled, no reply. The FAQ should auto-reply within 2 seconds with the can password reset link. The urgent should fire a Slack alert and not auto-reply. If any of these misbehave, the issue is almost always the prompt. Open the Claude HTTP node, copy the prompt and the offending email into Anthropic's web console at console.anthropic.com, and tweak the few shot examples until the classification is correct. Repaste into n8n. Common mistake, testing with too few examples and shipping a brittle classifier. Run at least 50 real emails through the workflow before going live. Recap, we now have a tested, debugged workflow handling 3 real categories correctly. Production deployment. To run this 24/7 we need n8n running outside our laptop. Easiest path, deploy the same Docker composed to a $5 Hetzner Cloud VPS or a Railway.net template. Add a Cloudflare tunnel or set up Caddy as a reverse proxy with HTTPS so Gmail OAuth callbacks work. Google requires HTTPS for OAuth in production. Set n8n_encryption_key in environment so credentials are encrypted at rest. Add a uptime_kuma monitor pinging your n8n instance every 5 minutes. If it goes down you get a Telegram alert. Set up automated daily Postgres backups to an S3 or B2 bucket with a script that calls pg_dump and uploads. Why automate backups? I lost 3 weeks of email history once because Supabase free tier paused my project after 7 days of inactivity. Now I run weekly downloads to local. Add a Vercel cron job hitting a health check endpoint that returns 200 if Claude API responds and the Postgres connection is alive. If anything fails, it sends a webhook to Slack. Common mistake, deploying without HTTPS, OAuth refuses to refresh tokens after 7 days, and the agent silently dies. Always HTTPS in prod. Recap, the agent runs 24/7, monitored, encrypted, backed up. Quick recap of what we built and how to scale it. We have an n8n workflow with 7 main nodes: Gmail trigger, Postgres memory lookup, Claude API HTTP, switch router, 3 reply branches, Slack escalation, Postgres log. It handles roughly 140 emails per day at 4 cents each, replying to 70% automatically and escalating 30%. To scale to 1,000 emails per day, 3 changes. 1. Switch the Postgres node to use connection pooling via pgbouncer to avoid hitting Supabase default 60 connection cap. 2. Switch the embedding store from pgvector to Pinecone or cron for sub 50 millisecond retrieval at high QPS. 3. Implement prompt caching on the Claude HTTP node by sending the system prompt with cache_control breakpoints. This cuts cost by 90% for repeated prompts. To monetize, package this as a service for other founders. Charge $299 per month per inbox. Target SaaS founders on Indie Hackers and X. 20 customers equals $6,000 monthly recurring. Or sell the n8n workflow JSON as a one-time download for $49 on Gumroad.